No, there's still a couple to come in, but we'll get started. So next on the agenda, we've got the disability sector update. And good morning, Maurice and Bridget.
Morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I'll start. So I am Morris. I work here as my role is the Accessible Transport Coordinator. So what that is I coordinate two of our schemes that are focused on disability and elderly people, that being the accessibility concession and our total mobility scheme. So the first that I'd like to focus on for an update on disability issues and disability around the Waikato is on the accessibility concession. So just a reminder for what the accessibility concession is. This was advocated from the disabled community back in, I believe, 2019, around needing more accessible, affordable transport for our disabled community. And council of that time agreed to not only subsidise public transport, but to make it completely free for people with disability that cannot drive. So great scheme. It's been improved over time. We've got around about 5,000, just under 5,000 users throughout the region that are on the accessibility concession. So it's developed over time, and last year when I spoke to RTC, we had just undergone a review of the accessibility concession. This was to see what is going well and what we can improve for disabled people. A part of this review was interviewing disabled users of the concession, of how they found it was going, and the other one was that we interviewed a group of our bus drivers who obviously provide the scheme for disabled people. And there were a few things that were more internal that we needed to change about the concession to make it a bit more user-friendly, which we have done. But the bigger part which really spoke out to me was both sides, disabled people and bus drivers, equally said that they would like to have disability awareness training. Huge. So that's what we have done. We completed disability awareness training provided by CCS Disability Action late last year, November last year. All bus drivers that provide throughout the Waikato were underwent this training. So it was really neat. I believe a few of you attended one of the sessions. So this training was provided by disabled people, so disabled users of public transport. So one, I believe, one was a person who has blind low vision, and the other one was a power wheelchair user, both frequent users of our public transport system. And it was quite a really broad, great training. So what was covered was one key aspect was hidden disability. What is hidden disability and how to interact with it appropriately if you identify. An understanding of the correct language and use of appropriate way to interact with disabled people. And how to appropriately support a person with a disability to get on and off a bus. This was a more specific to people with mobility aids. And we did a physical training as well. So they would go and do a theoretical training. And then after that, we went out and we had a bus prepared for them to have a space where they can have a bit of a training to get people on and off the bus. And we looked at key identifiers of what were issues that may come up for the disabled person or for a bus driver as well, because if you do it wrong, there's potential for, I guess, hurting yourself, especially with big power wheelchairs, getting them on and off. And I really believe that this training was greatly appreciated by our team, our bus drivers. We did have some really robust conversations about some of the issues that bus drivers identified that they were having. And it's really highlighted the importance of continuing these conversations with drivers because these drivers are really making a huge impact. They are the people that are helping disabled people get out and about, be a part of the community. And yeah, it was really shown with that. Like it really was like a really like aha moment for these drivers. They actually make a real big difference in our community, and their job is important for disabled people. And it segues into another conversation that I had, and it really just highlighted the importance to me. I was invited to go and speak to a disability organisation that focuses on people with intellectual disability, ID Services, and they are a big supporter of the scheme. And so it was a big group of people, and as soon as I mentioned the accessibility concession, all of them got out the accessibility concession cards, and they were really proud of it. And we had a really good conversation about what it is that they use the scheme for, what it is that they go out and about and they do in their community every week. And it really just, it highlighted the importance to me about the importance of the scheme and the true potential it has for growth of independence of individuals that we have within our community. The other part that I wanted to speak to was just an update on total mobility. We've got a goal to achieve midway this year that we want to go regionally rated. I believe you all know about that. So we're targeting different districts at the moment to get them up and running. And Hauraki is now up and running, which has been a big goal to achieve. So thank you for the help with that. Yeah. And I'll pass it on to...
Unless we want to have questions for Morris now.
Any questions for Morris before Bridget? Angela?
Yeah, Morris, thank you for your presentation, always inspiring. Just on that total mobility, so Hauraki's come on board now.
Yes.
Who's on, who's not on yet?
So we've got, so Hauraki, we've partnered with a driver, Miss Daisy, that are local to the area. So they're servicing the whole of Hauraki. And we've got an assessing agency. So there's two parts to total mobility. There's a community aspect where you need to have assessing agencies. So they are the ones where disabled people can go to see, and they ask the relevant questions to check eligibility, take their photo for their total mobility card. So that which they receive, which is the card that they use to in the taxi to receive the subsidy. And there's also the part where we need taxi providers to provide the scheme. So we've got a local community house that is supporting the assessing part, who are based in Waihi. They've got an office in Paeroa as well. And we've got a driver, Miss Daisy, that is covering the whole district. Oh, sorry. Okay, so yep, for parts that do not have total mobility yet, that is the South Waikato. We've got it in Taupo, we have it in Tokoroa. We just need to focus on Otorohanga and that side of South Waikato. Yeah. It's
Awesome.
Pretty much the only place we don't have it yet.
Cool. And just, you were starting to outline some of the roadblocks or some of the barriers to getting that. So it would be having an assessor.
Yes.
And then also having a local provider as well.
Yes.
So it's a great opportunity for small business.
Totally is. Yeah. Yeah. For the likes of, we've just worked with Matamata Piako. There's a small taxi company there, Matamata Taxis, who have taken on the scheme. They're now providing total mobility. Yeah, great for their service and also good for the community as well, because it means that they've got easier access to taxi providers. It makes it cheaper. It's a win-win. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So for Otorohanga, last one.
Next thing.
Thanks, Morris. Thanks for the awesome work and for the advocacy that you obviously provide. Recently, the Hamilton City Council dogs policy, one of the submitters came in, he uses a service dog, and he was really concerned about not necessarily the buses, but other community and maybe retailers who were questioning him having his dog around. Do you cover that kind of awareness with your driver training, and are you aware of any issues that have come up
Yeah.
bus service?
Yes, this was covered in the bus driver training, the different types of service dogs and the different colour vests and what they mean. For like blind, low vision, their vests are red, and for service dogs are green. So it's about disability awareness. It's not widely known outside of the disability community about what these dogs are, what they do, how they work with disabled people. That's why we need more broader disability awareness training for all of like public services, public spaces, about how we, what they are. And so, yeah.
Thank you. That sounds perfect. He is not a blind man, and so his dog wasn't wearing a red vest, and it's
Right.
not a Labrador either. So
Yes.
that's the other assumptions the
Yeah.
public can make about service dogs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rodney.
Oh, I was just curious about why at Tauranga it's not total. Is it just because you haven't been there yet, or is it
We haven't targeted that area yet. Yeah.
no roadblock I can unlock? Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
No, that's right.
If the area's Rodney will fix it.
You know, in the back of a truck.
Bridget.
Oh, hi, kia ora. I'm Bridget Doran. I'm a contract transport policy and public transport planning advisor in the strategy and policy team here. And I've had a long interest in transport for older and disabled people. So I'm going to talk to some of the other questions that were raised that we wanted addressed in this forum. So the first one was around the proportion of the population identifying as disabled and what we might do or lead around that. So the latest census data was just released actually within the last month, and I haven't seen the Waikato region, but the numbers for New Zealand as a whole in the 2018 census, 24% of New Zealanders identified as being a disabled person, and in 2018 that dropped to 17%. Which is massive, and I don't think reflects the change in the needs for people of accessible and inclusive transport. I suspect it can only be something around the identity and maybe something to do with the census sampling or otherwise, or else just people not wanting to say that they identify as a disabled person, because that's a massive drop, and we know we have ageing population nationwide, and there's no reason to think that the need has dropped. So that's not the numbers for Waikato region, but we tend to pretty much mirror the average, usually around that. In terms of what we might do around that and how the council and the RTC can take a lead, that's a pretty big question. I think we're already leading in a lot of ways. We have community transport staff that are across inclusion and access. We have Morris, whose role is broader than total mobility, which is a bit unusual in a regional council context. But even in terms of strategy, so the way that we talk about access and mobility in our regional land transport plan and public transport plan has always been pretty strong, and we're looking to progress that and make it better. And one of the ways that we're looking to do that is to start to measure and monitor how exclusion manifests in our region. And that's quite a big change for the transport sector as a whole. It's not something that is routinely measured. And if you compare it to something like road safety, where we have a long history of a lot of professionals putting a lot of effort into reducing crashes, when it comes to access and inclusion, no one in transport in the world, as far as I know, ever measures exclusion. And it's not something that anyone's putting their hand up to do, because why would you think that? Put that on a map who is not getting the transport that they need. But that's something that we are keen in our region to start doing. So our transport team is working with the social science and economics team to improve some of the ways that, or to add some new questions to some of the surveys that we answer of regular people who use public transport and total mobility and community transport, to ask in particular if there are trips that people are not making because of a transport problem. And that's the question that, to my mind, is central to all of this. And so ideally, as we progress with that, we'll get to understand where the pockets of need actually are, because we can have total mobility rolled out and we can have community transport. But as Morris said, there's about 5,000 people with an access concession. That's less than the people that we know are disabled or adults who can't drive. So we want to get a better picture, understanding of that transport-related exclusion in the region, so that we can target our efforts to improve it. In terms of government support and other matters, the Ministry of Transport is still reviewing total mobility, the policy nationally. over the last sort of 6 months, the staff member that I knew was leading it has left the ministry, and we don't really know where it's at. We don't have much, how should I put this, optimism around the current government doing much at all to make paradigm shifts in that area, shall I say. But there's always opportunity at this regional level, in fact, perhaps even more opportunity at regional than national to do good things. You know, we have bus contract renewals coming up, we have electric bus conversations coming up, and we're working really closely, like almost on a daily basis with our council partners to plan that out in ways that will achieve, you know, all of our goals. There's not much sort of concrete actions around access that we're putting into that, except for including equity considerations and community considerations and where we're planning those routes to go. There's also the national ticketing question and whether there's potential to use that to kind of lead nationally. All of the regional concessions that every region has now can be taken forward with a national ticketing option. It's still up to the region to set those. So yes, of course, we hope or assume that we'll keep our concession and that will become something that is more visible through that scheme to other regions than it might have been before. And one of the advantages I think of that might be better data around who is using this, who isn't, what's the gap between who we know might have a need, and therefore how can we continue to promote those things. And in just referencing service dogs because it came up, a few years ago I wrote a report for WAKA KOTAHI on disabled people's experiences of transport in Aotearoa, and that's online on WAKA KOTAHI's website. That's what it's called, Disabled People's Experiences of Transport. And we surveyed 15,000 disabled people around the country, and the issue of, well, lots of issues came up, you can imagine. It's a pretty weighty report in terms of the way it describes what people said about all of these issues. And service dogs comes up regularly in conversations with disabled people, not just service dogs, but people who use guide dogs being told they're not allowed to get in a taxi, which is illegal, but that still happens around the country. So my view really is that these issues will continue to perpetuate until we have a real kind of shift in how we value inclusion in transport and raise the kind of community profile of these issues, because they're not unique to us, that's for sure. I think that's all I had.
Maxine, you got a question for Bridget?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for talking about those service dogs. It's interesting to hear this man's experience also. And congratulations on your investigation into transport exclusion. I understand that Waikato Hospital have a lot of no-show appointments because of that very issue.
Yeah.
Just interested in your perspective on that.
Yep.
And also, will you be working with other agencies to understand that no-show to appointments? Not just there, I guess, but in many other.
Yeah, for sure. So about 10 years ago, there was some work by this region on the transport contribution to did not attends at hospital. And they found, and I think this has been replicated elsewhere, around 10% of not showing up to hospital appointments can be attributed to a transport problem. It's a very complicated issue. A lot of the time people literally don't know they had an appointment, or they don't prioritise it or remember to go. So it's not the same for everybody. But that really started the community transport, or really put more emphasis on community transport in our region. That work I was involved with, and some here were involved with, over 10 years ago, because there was a trial in Hauraki around having an 0800 number for people to request transport and to be put in touch with community transport providers and that kind of thing. I don't know whether those statistics have changed very much. Like I say, there's a lot of factors that go into it, and the needs aren't necessarily reducing in the country. So while some people's experience might be better now with community transport, there will be others coming through who don't necessarily have it. So to that end, yes, we are working with other agencies. In fact, I've got a meeting with the hospital next week to talk broadly about transport, and they've just done a new strategy for patients, visitors and staff around access to hospitals. So we're going to build on that and work with them to kind of plan a bit more joined up into the future, especially as we're looking at new contracts and bus routes and services and things, but also integrating that with community transport, total mobility, and getting to understand how we can help. Because that report that I mentioned, we had a story when we asked people, is there a trip you haven't made? Somebody said they couldn't get home from hospital, because if you go to hospital in an ambulance, they don't take you home again. And some people have just been left in the transit lounge, especially a disabled person. The taxis don't operate 24/7 for total mobility necessarily. Quite often you have to book it in advance. There's some really horrifying stories about people being left behind. So yeah, the short answer is we're working with the hospital. Yeah.
Morris and Bridget, thank you very much for your report. We've got kind of a mover and a seconder for the disability sector update. Thank you, Maxine, and a seconder, Adrian. All those in favour? Oh, right. Sorry, Maxine. I got Angela. Would you like to go? I've just been told because you're here now. And morning, Angela. So would you like to move it? Yep. Yeah, sorry, Maxine. Yeah, because alternative. It's not me, it's this guy here who's giving me the nudge. And the seconder was Andrea.
I got two.
Yeah. Okay, so the next item we have on the agenda is speed management report, and I think we've got Brian.
Thank you, Chair. There is, I'll take the report in the pack as read, along with the somewhat substantial proposed submission as well, but I will make a few framing up comments before I open it up to questions. So the Land Transport Rule setting the speed limits 2024 came into effect on the 30th of October 2024, and it was a substantial shift from the previous speed limit setting rule. The new rule sets out ways that road controlling authorities can propose, consult and set speed limits, including how these proposals are developed, shared and certified. The rule also requires the reversal of speed limits that have been lowered after the 1st of January 2020 on both state highways and local roads before the 1st of May 2025. NZTA has started implementing the rule in relation to state highways. Some of the speed limit reversals on state highways are being consulted on and others are not. State Highway 3 at Rukuhia, that's how you say it, and State Highway 1 along a length of the shore of Lake Taupo are open for consultation, while State Highway 1C, State Highway 3 and State Highway 26 in Hamilton are having their speed limits reversed automatically without consultation. So what we've prepared, and it's attached to the report, is a substantial submission for the committee to consider for approval and then lodging with the New Zealand Transport Agency. There is also an opportunity for further advocacy with the new minister. We have seen that there has been some shifts with the new minister in terms of which roads are being consulted on and which ones are not. So that's the two requests, I suppose, out of the report. Just in terms of the submission, just in terms of the highlights around that, the submission itself seeks that the committee support the retention of lower speed limits as they were based on sound road safety and environmental rationale, large public consultation and community acceptances, and in many cases demands from those communities to actually have those speed limits changed. We're also concerned with the fact that the reasoning behind many of these speed limit reversals is based on economic development, and that is somewhat questionable, I would suggest, in terms of how that plays out, because in many cases, higher speed limits, higher average travel speeds, all it does is increase the cost of transport, and there's reports and research which actually supports that. We're asking that with regards to speed limits outside schools, that the committee recommends that either the NZTA take steps to ensure that RCAs implement school speed limits for schools on specified roads facing speed limit reversals before the speed limit reversal takes effect, or that the speed limit reversals along specified roads and schools that have not yet had school speed limits formalised be delayed until the school speed limits are able to be introduced. We should not be seeing increased speeds outside of schools. committee also seeks, the submission also seeks the committee to agree to retaining the current speed limit along State Highway 3 at Ruakahia. Similarly, we're also recommending the retention of the current speed limit along the section of State Highway 1 along Lake Taupo up to Turangi. And with regard to the proposal of auto reversal of the speed limit on State Highway 26, the submission is asking the committee that the proposed auto reversal be delayed until the planned safety improvements and the revocation of the state highway as part of the Southern Links project be completed so that the appropriate speed limit can be decided on in consultation with Hamilton City Council. There's one further key piece that the submission is talking about, and that is it's recommending that there be no changes to any speed limits in any locations under the rule until such a time as the current judicial review process is complete. The issue with that is, we at WRC have been looking at this. We don't think that WRC should be part of the judicial review, as we're not a road controlling authority, but members, territorial authorities around this table are road controlling authorities. And I guess the question is open as to whether councils around the table here today are seeking to be part of that judicial review. I note that the cut-off time for joining that review is the 20th of March. I think I've probably said enough in terms of what we wanted to talk about today, but there's a fair bit in this. It's an important road safety issue. It's, and I think that the purported economic benefits of increasing speed limits are questionable. But we certainly know that the impact of increasing travel speeds on road trauma is significant, and that's something that we shouldn't be sort of steering away from. So, Chair, I'll pause there and happy to take any questions.
Okay, any question here, Andrew?
So the report, just a question of clarification around State Highway 26. You talk about from State Highway 1 intersection. I presume you mean Cambridge Road, because technically that's not State Highway 1 anymore. Is that what you're meaning?
Oh, I think that.
So it really is Cambridge Road
Yeah.
out heading towards Newstead. And I understand that Hamilton City have got a proposal going out for a interesting shaped intersection roundabout at the bottom of the hill there.
Yeah.
So it's the 60k zone out from the Burger King roundabout, as we all call it, and then it goes to 80 further out. That's the stretch of road that you're talking about, just for clarification?
I believe so, yes, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a heavy, that's where Hamilton City will have a strong view on what that would mean for commuters and probably for people coming from that side of the community, the region coming into town. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what feedback you get, but yeah, just clarify that it's not State Highway 1 anymore. It used to be, and it's Cambridge Road.
Kevin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this item. I've read through the submission and it reasonably closely aligns with the draft submission that the Taupo District Council have got, although to be fair, that has not yet been adopted by elected members. So a couple of comments I would make, particularly around the map on page 53 of the agenda, which is the same map that's included in our District Council submission. One of the community concerns, particularly from those in the southern part of the district, and that's Turangi and the other settlements, is the significant confusion that's occurred with the constantly changing speed limits. Now, the outer scope pieces that are noted on that map are at 100 k's. So you go 80, 60, 100, 80, 60, 100, and so on and so on. And that's caused massive community feedback against the 80k zones. I'm not quite sure how best to resolve that. I would arguably be arguing against myself if I said put it all back to 100, because we all know what extra speed does. But I also know that if you don't have the community with you and it doesn't make sense, and this is aimed probably at NZTA, then no one's going to comply anyway. So I guess what we are likely to do and what I will be advocating in-house for our submission is that we have a rationalisation of the speeds that it makes sense. My next point is thank you for the specific point around Mutiteri and Bully Point. My request would be that we beef that part of the submission up. So we had more than 12 months worth of process for the Mutiteri Reserve Management Plan. The reserve is bisected by State Highway 1. And there's a motor camp in the middle of that, and everybody crosses that road. And it's 60k at the moment. And if it goes back to anything above 60k, you won't have me as a friend for a start, nor will you have anyone in the district as a friend. The last point I'd make is it's not just Mototeri. You have Motuapa, just a little bit further south, which is currently 60. Wasn't previously. You also have at the northern part of that map, Waitahanui, which is also out of scope, but it is not 100k through there. It is 60. It was previously, so excuse my memory, 70 or 80. And we've had a pedestrian fatality in that stretch of road some years ago. So my request would be, which is if you want to align with what we will be submitting, is that all of the villages between Taupo and Turangi remain at 60, and that there is some kind of rationalisation of the 80-100 dynamic. So either take the 100k out just north of Motuapa and make it 80 to be consistent right through, or look at reversing all the others. So if the submission was along those lines, I can assure this committee that that is what our submission will be if I've got anything to do with it, and I will. Just saying.
Yeah, and I can endorse it, given a lot of feedback I have is just the amount of changes and the speed limits around there. And, you know, people do use common sense to it, you know, because it is a very windy and State Highway 1 and trucks and narrow bends. So, yeah, it's having that consistency right from Taupo to Turangi, noting the villages as well. Jeanette.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for a very good submission. It was, I thought, very well done. I just wondered whether, given there's this emphasis on reducing travelling time to increase productivity, whether it was worthwhile adding something in maybe around paragraph 30 or 35 about public transport and the fact that effective public transport would likely reduce congestion and actually be a far more effective increaser of productivity than some of these, removing some of these speed limits. And I'm thinking, you know, the KARAKIA just coming into Hamilton there, because we've seen in this meeting pack and other places as well, the effectiveness of reducing road congestion through extra public transport, if that was appropriate.
Yeah, it's interesting, I think, again, through the chair, the big economic sort of issue in terms of road travel is reliability of travel time. And so if you do things that get rid of things like congestion or unplanned blockages of the road, that is the big benefit for economic productivity, is how that sort of plays out. So if you are looking to promote public transport in that space, you are taking other vehicles off the road. And so you are reducing, as you point out, that whole congestion potential. So yes, that could be a thing we add in.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lynn, online.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, can I just apologise? I missed the name of the presenter and I can't see it on the agenda here. Can I just clarify who presented that document?
It's Brian Sherritt.
Brian. Brian, congratulations on an excellent submission. Good report. So thank you very much for that. This is a really, really hot topic in the Coromandel, and I'm hearing that it's also a hot topic around lots of other parts of the Waikato and around other parts of the Motu as well. three elements to what is concerning our communities mainly, and we're still going through a council process in terms of submissions, but what I'm going to give you is some feedback that I'm getting on a daily basis as I go out and talk to my communities. First of all, over the Christmas New Year period, Andrew knows this very well, just before Christmas, we had a number of the speed limits which had been in place under emergency management reversed, and a number of these were outside schools. That caused an immediate flurry of emails and phone calls from school principals and from community leaders in the holiday spots, which were just starting to fill up with people and lots of pedestrians. And suddenly we've got speed limits going from 70k back to 100, or from 40 or 50k back to 70. So we heard loud and clear that they were extremely concerned. Andrew was extremely proactive in this holiday period, and thank you for that, Andrew. But it was clear that NZTA's hands were tied under emergency management. They had no choice but to reverse those. We understand that, but we have also given a commitment to our school principals and our community leaders that we will be doing what we can to advocate and to get the messaging across that schools in particular, and they make this point often, schools in particular do not just operate in school hours. They operate sports days and other outside school hours activities on a regular basis, and a number of them in our area have early childhood centres across the other side of a state highway. So to have 100k speed limit through that at these times and weekends is causing a great deal of concern. So first of all, from what I'm seeing of the submission, I think our council, based on the feedback that we've had, would support that very strongly, but also request that the additional advocacy in terms of a letter to the Minister Chris Bishop, we would support that as well, because we think there's a strong need for that additional advocacy. The other thing that's concerning us, and I'm interested to hear from other councils and other mayors, is the additional costs of putting the speed limits back to what they were. And for our council, it's looking around $1.9 million. We know there's a subsidy from NZTA to assist with that, but the bill's still going to come in at around $1 million at a time when we're under great pressure. And so the question that's being asked, why would we pay $1 million to achieve results that our communities don't want? And the last point is that there's a strong message coming through that communities need to be the ones giving the input into this process, and it needs to happen a lot quicker than the current structures that we've got in procedures that we've got in place now. So I'll leave it there, but thank you. That's very much appreciated for the work that's been done on this.
Thanks, Mayor Lim. Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and great discussion so far. Yeah, my points are probably around State Highway 26 within Hamilton, from Cambridge Road down through to that new intersection down the dip by Silverdale Road. I'm also on the chair. I'm also the chair of the Barclay Normal Middle School Board. Recently, we had a child hit at the signalised crossing, and the road was closed all morning for hours and hours, creating lots of congestion everywhere else. You know, there's been fatalities along that stretch of road, and when the announcement came out, I happened to be in at school, and schools were just blindsided. They had no idea this was coming. You know, raising speeds along that stretch just doesn't really make sense given the amount of schools in that area, the amount of traffic. Nobody can go that fast anyway. You know, Hamilton City has been consulting the community around especially that intersection down the bottom. But that whole corridor along there needs to acknowledge all road users. And at the moment, this just seems really tone deaf to what the community wants and what the community needs. You know, we bemoan the fact that parents drop their kids off, but if parents don't think their kids are going to be safe, then they're going to drop them off. So we're increasing congestion by forcing parents to keep their children safe. However, if we provided safe crossing points, and this is meant to be a safe crossing point with the signalised crossing, and yet it wasn't. And I believe that it happened just before 8 a.m, so it wasn't within when the signalised crossing changes over automatically. So, yep, we've had other children knocked off bikes along there as well. And, you know, for what? You know, an extra 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Yeah, I think the submission is excellent. You know, paragraph 31, you've mentioned the economic impact of when roads are closed and people have to go the other way. And for such a big stakeholder being our schools to not even be consulted is, yeah, I totally agree with the submission that, you know, public and the communities do need to be consulted over this. And then you also to Len's point as well, the cost of going back at a really financially constrained times for so many councils. It just seems ideologically insane. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Claire?
Yes, I want to echo all the congratulations on a really well put together submission, Brian, and I'm speaking to 2 points. The first one is State Highway 3, Ruakahia, that's from paragraph 45, and also about the productivity that public transport brings. So absolutely support the stance that's there for State Highway 3 with Ruakahia. We're really concerned that it looks like it could be increased again, and really think that the recommendation to review it as part of the Southern Links project makes the most sense, definitely. And just on the productivity point, I'm not sure if this came through in the detail though, that people that use public transport actually can do work on their devices, you know, as part of the trip, which you can't do in a car. You know, like my kids are always, you know, doing the emails, doing research, you know, with Google, you know, like that also should be taken into account because like the buses that we have in Waipa, I'm pretty sure they've got Wi-Fi, but you can also use your mobile data anyway, you know, and this is the way, you know, the younger generation, well, actually not just the younger generation, but, you know, this is the way people are using technology. Yeah, and I think that should be acknowledged.
Thanks, Claire. Andrea?
Yeah, just thanks. Just following on from the State Highway 26 issue that Angela obviously highlighted is with the whole concept of changing those speeds back, has the environment, you know, because it's at the end of the day, it's the environment that dictates whether a speed should be reduced or not, I would have thought. That would have been the key part and the volume of traffic. And yeah, it seems really weird to, so obviously they're going to reverse it back to 80, are they, from 60? Is that the intention from the roundabout through to down to the bottom of the hill? Because that must be about 260 metres, of which Barclay Intermediate's, you know, and there's a lot of roads coming off there as streets coming off as well that are in that 50k space. So you sort of think you can't travel fast through there when there's traffic there. So what is the, so I guess it would go back to 80. Is that what it would?
I think that's correct, yes.
Which is part of the, you know, it's part of a built-up area to me, which seems a bit odd. So what is it's probably a perverse question, but what is the penalty for councils not reversing some of these speeds? Like there were some rural areas where speeds have been changed when you'd say, well, did you really need to do that? Whereas these ones seem quite logical. So what is the risk to a council not changing those speeds really is the question? Because A, there's funding, and B, it's doing opposite to what the legislation is directing. So I'm keen to understand what those challenges might be for councils. Andrew might have, yeah.
Andrew's got his light on, so
Yeah.
well done, Andrew.
There's a lot in this, and you're dealing with a rule that is, a blanket rule for those specified types of roads here, and you're doing, absolutely the right thing in making this submission with 3 days to go, and Taupo as well. Make sure you get those in. There's a lot being received, obviously, with regard to the question around what happens if you don't implement. First steps are probably sternly worded letters of some sort, I imagine, and it becomes more of probably a reputational type of risk. Ultimately, I think NZTA can go and change the signage itself, which is obviously not something that we are wanting to do either.
Rodney?
Yeah, I just had just curious, like Len's saying, it's a cost $1 million, is it? I understand you just be changing the sign and changing the GPS coordinate. So these signs, that bloody dear. We got told our council the signs went very dear. So
I'm not sure what
Yeah,
Len's calculations are.
that's a lot of money to go and change a few signs. The other thing I'd like, as a car driver, I'm in the Mount last week on holiday. I'm saying to my partner, what speed can we do here? I've got no idea. No, not a clue. Luckily, I've got 2 new trucks now that have got cameras that read signs. So that's 2 drivers that know what speed limit, they should go. But, it's just confusing. When I got my license in a built-up area, you went slow, and an open road, you went faster. Now we got 60, 80, 100, 70, 40, 30, I mean, are we not allowed to use common sense now and just bloody slow down if there's a lot of people around? Sorry, but yeah, I'm over all the speed thing, to be fair. Yeah.
It is a robust discussion, because I think it does affect, and as you say, different changes, in such a short distance and stuff like that. So, Brian, I think you got the gist. It's a very good submission, and I think in the resolution that we need to have all these 3 in here, especially the last one that says the committee write a letter to Chris Bishop, because we've only got a week or 3 days to do it. So can I have a mover and a seconder that those the 3 parts in there, that a report be received, that the submission on speed limit reversals be approved for submitting to NZTA, and the committee write a letter to Chris Bishop?
So I'm happy to move that, but would that be point 2, including some of the suggestions that have been given? Or is it as it's written in the minutes?
Yeah, we haven't got much time, Brian.
It's a
If
conversation.
we've taken in all the comments.
Kind of null and void.
We can pick up on the comments that have been suggested today and revise the submission, I guess. Does it then need to come back to the chair? Is it how it normally works, Phil?
So I'm happy to move on the understanding that our comments are taken on board. Otherwise, the discussion was nice to have, but it's meaningless.
Yep, for number 2. Yep. Dave, do you want to have that in there? Yep.
Can I just ask if you have reports going to your councils on this topic, or there are copies of submissions that we could reflect on as we make those changes? If we can use the same words as Taupo or Coromandel or others, we'd be very happy to do so. So if you have copies of documents that you can share with us, we'd be happy to do it.
It'd be really useful.
Yeah, just be aware we've only got a short time frame.
That's right.
Okay, we've got a mover and Kevin, and a seconder, and thanks, Claire. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Okay, folks, we'll go on to the next one, which is a community transport grant fund, and we've got a declare of conflict of interest from Councillor Clare, and we've got Amantha and Madeline. Good morning, Amantha and Madeline.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. The report before you provides a general update on community transport, focusing primarily on the outcomes of the recent funding round of the Community Transport Grant Fund, as well as an update on other work that's going on in the community transport space. So, Mr. Chair, I'll take the report largely as read, but I will just point out a few key highlights. So first of all, the 2025 funding round saw a substantial increase in the number of applicants, resulting in a competitive allocation process that resulted in 29 community transport providers obtaining funding from WRC. There's a table in the report showing the range of providers across the region that have been allocated funding. So the fund was oversubscribed. There was a total of 441,000 requested from the 300,000 grant pool. So the good news is that this growing demand for community transport in the region has been recognised by Waikato Regional Council. At the draft annual plan budget meeting, Council decided to propose an increase to the fund to 500,000, subject of course to consultation as part of the annual plan process. And Council also decided that community transport and total mobility will be rated under the new public transport system, again subject to the consultation. So these decisions serve to elevate the importance and contribution of community transport to the regional transport network and to our transport users. But it also recognises the work that your committee has done through the RLTP and through other work streams in terms of supporting community transport and elevating it. So the increase in the fund will trigger a need to review the grant fund policy, obviously to recognise the increased funding cap, and this provides a great opportunity for us to also look at other policy areas that could be reviewed and strengthened, such as the reporting requirements. So while the fund is the core component of the community transport program, there's also a range of other work going on to support our partners around the region. So excitingly, we're holding the 2025 Waikato Community Transport Symposium on the 12th of March out at the Jet Park at the airport. So if you haven't registered, please feel free to and come along and hear some really interesting talks. Staff are also engaged in a range of other work, including supporting community transport partners respond to a request for information from Health New Zealand, Te Whatu Ora, who are looking to build a national non-acute patient transport solution. So we're currently providing informal feedback on behalf of the Waikato Regional Transport Forum to enable the Waikato experience to be reflected in the information that's gathered nationally. So that's quite interesting work at the moment. Other work that's underway that's noted in your report includes a project to provide GIS community transport and total mobility mapping, which will benefit both our users and our coordinators. And there'll be a demonstration of this at the symposium, which will be interesting. And there's also a legal review of community transport underway to better understand the role of community transport and its role as public transport. So I understand we're looking to report back to you at your June meeting. So in a nutshell, that's the key components of the report. I have Amantha Bowen here, who is our community transport lead. So I'll hand any questions over to her because she can provide a much more comprehensive response than me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Madeline. Any questions, Angela? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the report. Yeah, and looking forward to Wednesday. Hey, just a question around community transport and what happens nationwide in that area. Can you just talk us through what other regions are doing and how NZTA supports community transport?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Angela, and through the chair. I am aware of Canterbury has had over a decade-long relationship with not only funding, like providing grants of about 10,000 to each one of their, I think about 16 or 17 community transport providers, but they also actually helped set up most of those trusts. So they had a member of staff who went around and helped set them up and then had voting rights on their boards for a number of years. So that was a very intense level of support that their council was able to give. And now they sort of just have business as usual operation. Half of that 10K that they give to each provider is local share, and the other half comes from WAKA KOTAHI contribution. And I believe for them that is sourced through their total mobility scheme funding. They also have 2 community transport providers who are also registered total mobility providers as well, which is a unique situation that we are interested in trying to work out how we could do a similar thing. Bay of Plenty also has one provider that they have, one community transport group that they have got a total mobility relationship contract with. And but they do not otherwise fund community transport. Then you've got Horizons Council, which has for, I think, similarly around a decade provided some level of funding to various groups, including St. John. Again, no total mobility relationship there, but they do fund community transport. And I believe that's just through their general local rates, but also a contribution from WAKA KOTAHI through their general continuous improvement activity class or something thereabouts. And then Northland Council within the past 2 years was able to secure some WAKA KOTAHI funding to support them helping a single community transport group get started. And so they were able to have that partnership where they part-funded. WAKA KOTAHI contributed to them giving, I think, about 20K in the first year and maybe 10K in the second year. And just adding that Taranaki also has one community transport group that is providing total mobility, but again, they're not funding community transport that I know of. So there's a standing relationship with both an overlap of total mobility, but also WAKA KOTAHI contributing funding in some regions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just really do appreciate all the work that you do in this space, because we know within the Waikato region how diverse it is and how different communities have different needs, and a big bus or doesn't fit the need in every community. So this type of transport needs are only going to grow in the future, to keep people in their homes and their towns, and to keep our small towns thriving as well. So yeah, thank you for the work. And yeah, also really interested in the work that you're doing outside of the grant as well. So providing, I don't know, the infrastructure that these groups need for their sustainability as well. So yeah, good work. Thank you.
Kevin.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the report. I was encouraged to read the number and mostly the diversity of groups who were successful. Just quick, I don't know if it's a question or a comment. I note at least 12 of them are health-related shuttle services, and I'm just reading your paragraphs 30 through 32 in the report with Te Whatu Ora, their request for information. And I guess for me, it raises for me the question as to how much are they stepping up to provide this, and when they don't, the regional council through this fund fills the gap. And I'm not suggesting we don't, but what I would suggest is that comes at an opportunity cost for other groups who need to provide funding, which leads to my second comment around the overlap between this fund and our general public transport, particularly for small communities. And I'm suggesting that, as I've said previously, if we can be creative in the models that we use for smaller communities around the region, I'm sure there'll be an overlap in this fund with public transport. So what I'm saying, I'm not saying don't give the money to St. John or to anyone else, but what I would say is by all means be robust with Te Whatu Ora and say, well, what are you folk doing to step up to the plate and play your part in this game? That would be my encouragement to staff in that respect. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. That was actually one of the things that I noticed as well. It's probably a third of the funding goes to those health transport overlays. I think it's about 120,000. And being a councillor, it's advocated in the long-term plan to increase the community transport fund. And the main reason was that when we went out to consultations to the TAs, one of the big things is what do they get for their PT rating? And as Kevin said, a lot of these smaller communities, it is that, Miss Daisy and stuff like that, and especially up in the Coromandel when the devastation happened up there, it was these small transports that got people to hospitals and to appointments and stuff like that. So it's good that you are having that talks with Te Ora and also the policy review as well, because my thinking for that increased fund is to get to those rural areas that need that community transport more so than just being taking up the slack from central government and their responsibility in the community as well. Okay, yeah, Andrew.
Just got a question really around, obviously with the government's directive around the well-beings, and this kind of sits in two places, doesn't it? So this is where it's one thing to take the well-beings out, but this is actually, it's not a massive pot of money, but it makes a difference in communities. So it's quite interesting how regional council will sort of quantify what this means, because it is like public transport is part of what we do, or what, you know, is, but it's also got a well-being component to it. And it's how rigid is that directive being applied to local government is probably my question in that space. So have you got any views on where it might sit from a council perspective?
Thank you for that question. Through the chair, I believe that we have really been enabled to support well-being through the use of this fund. I think when you consider people's needs, the hierarchy of needs, getting to your health appointments is a critical need, and we knew that throughout the pandemic and through cyclone damages and other things, that getting people at least to their hospital appointments is a critical thing. But we are more than something that needs a tune-up or treatment. So being able to expand on that is a huge goal of this fund, and we have been successful in encouraging through the contributions of the fund expansions to the kinds of transport that people are able to deliver. For example, Te Kawhara, they proposed this year a new initiative. So right now they do primarily get people to their health appointments, but part of their application with us this year was that they would like to start more social enterprise type transport, and that's meeting those well-being needs. People who have disabilities or live very rurally, or have other kinds of health limitations which require them to frequently visit hospital appointments, often correlate with highly isolated people who sometimes the highlight of their life is getting to interact with the driver or even the booking coordinator that they ring. And that's definitely something that we see a lot when we're coordinating the total mobility scheme as well, as people want to just have a chat, and that's actually really enriching and fulfilling for them as well. I'm not suggesting that that's what the fund is about, but I think it's definitely a critical component that we are able to not only help meet those other kinds of public transport needs, but also well-being from the bottom up. So from getting them to their health appointments, but also their grocery stores and their social appointments.
Thank you for that, because I think that really, and it follows on from what Ian said earlier about what's Te Pota Ora doing, because it's a health thing, right? But this is where there's a gap, and councils can play a role. And I think the value in that needs to be really quantified and shown as being a real thing, because obviously it is moving into that wellbeing space, but there's a gap there. Yes. And councils are seen to be the ones to provide that solution, to the problem. That's the interesting part of it.
If I can just add to that, Mr. Chair, the discussions we've been having with the Community Transport Forum in terms of providing feedback to Te Whatu Ora, we're actually picking up on that, and making sure that as they move and transition to a national, what they are referring to as a national solution for non-acute patient transport, that we don't lose these kind of key wellbeing factors. So one of the things that we are trying to push back on is, highlighting the amount of volunteer hours that the whole system relies on. And also picking up on Councillor Taylor's point too, the funding issue with that, and the fact that bespoke, community-driven solutions are actually key to getting the outcomes we want. So we're under time pressure for the feedback, and it is informal feedback, but we're happy to report back later. But we're trying to get some of these key fundamental issues that you're raising in this discussion put back to Te Whatu Ora to consider, because it looks like they might be moving quite quickly. And it's the first that these community providers have had a chance to hear about what they're up to and provide feedback, albeit through quite a technical process. So we're doing what we can there to raise the sort of key issues you're talking about and make sure that gets through from a Waikato perspective.
Thanks, Madeline and Amantha. So we've got a community transport grant fund report to be received. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Jeanette, and a seconder, Andrea. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you, ladies. Okay, we move on to the next item, which is PT operations report, and it's Kaina and Vincent. And we're running a little bit short of time, so not hurrying you or anything like that, but take it as read.
Morning, Chair and the committee members. With your permission, Chair, I would like to take the report as read, and I would like to highlight a few things from the report. I'll start from positive news. For WIPA contract, the 2 new double-decker EV were introduced in December last year. This means WIPA services the WIPA fleet is fully electrified. For Te service, we introduced a new stop at Pukekohe on 10 February. This will provide much better access for the residents from Tuakau and Pokeno. And lastly, I would like to talk about bus network performance. Looking at the last quarter of 2024, the bus patronage growth rate has dropped down to 1.8%, which is significantly lower than the previous quarters that patronage growth rate have been 16 to 18%. So here I could say that this is because of fare increase that took place in July last year. But I would like to point out that this quarter is the first quarter we did not invest for PT improvements. So remember, for the last couple of years, we had COVID recovery period. We had Hamilton refresh, and Meteor was introduced in 2023. And last year's highlight is the WIPA EV. So here it is natural that no new improvements is cooling down the patronage growth. And also the Q4 and the Q1 is usually fluctuated data because of the holiday period and the school period. Now over to you, Chair.
Thanks, Kaina. Any questions for Kaina? Anything to add, Vincent? No? Okay, then we've got the Public Transport Operations Report. We have a mover and a seconder, please. Thanks, Rodney. And second, Eugene. Oh, yep. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thanks, Kaina and Vincent. Right, we're on to Andrew's report now. Regional New Zealand Transport Agency update.
Right, we've already talked about half my slides, so I'll take the report as read and kind of whip through the things we've already discussed, and feel free to sing out if I whip past something you do have a question on as we go. We'll move on, thanks. And again, road efficiency group, we talked a little bit about last time, but all councils are on board with that now. Move on to the next one. I think we're talking about Brett, our new CE, was announced just prior to Christmas. He was welcomed with a pōwhiri officially last week. and he may be known to some of you before. He used to be the roading manager for NZTA WAKA KOTAHI at Bay of Plenty, so knows the wider region fairly well. Is he a topal? Okay. We'll move to the next one, thanks. IDM, so the IDM integrated delivery model is coming, replacing our network outcomes contract, so the NOC that you will have heard of in the past. It's quite a long process to get this in place, but the benefit of that is it's helping de-risk some of the renewal delivery work we have while new contracts are worked towards with some of those providers, but it will give us greater flexibility and efficiency in delivery when it is implemented to help us achieve what we need to achieve against the GPS. Moving on, please. Not sure I need to talk about speed limits rule any further today, but I'm happy to take questions. So we'll move on to the next one, which I think is also the NTS, which we've talked about today. I've got nothing new to report other than what was already discussed. So we'll move on to the next slide. Thanks, Dave. Just a little update in there. It's in the report around the changing code of practice as well around temporary traffic management. I'm happy to take any questions on that. And then we move into, I think, the Waikato updates, which is more pertinent to this committee. So summer maintenance, hopefully some of you have been held up around the place because we've been doing a heck of a lot of it over the last wee while, and the best thing, you know, has been the weather. It's played ball across the country really, and it's allowed us to achieve almost everything we've wanted to achieve in that program. Up there, we talked to T2W as well, so ongoing closures. I think we're a week into further detours from Whataru to Litchfield and Atiamuri down to Taupo as well. So there's 3 sections closed fully at the moment, with the Desert Road in its last week, which is on track for opening as well. And we've had the new bridge be completed there and a section open early on down to Rangipo, which took a bit of the relief out of the detour. The highlight of that really and has been the positive impact of the detour route itself. You know, the likes of Ohakuni, businesses receiving, you know, double the patronage than they normally would. But the flip side of that too is the amount of traffic and the risk and the perceptions of speed and danger on that route as well. So it's interesting to watch the various detours, you know, go from highs to lows as detour fatigue sets in. But overall, it's been a successful program. We do have consideration of Taupo to Turangi in the planning stages for end of the year, so next construction season. And we're already hearing a lot of you know, opposition, a lot of unsettled residents in that area, which we're taking into account in the planning, because that's a huge length of road without a clear detour route or a quick detour route. We shall talk. Yep. Ongoing, we'll move on. Thanks, Dave. This is just to highlight some of the ones which are going on or have been undertaken already. There is still a lot of work planned up around Coromandel, which I think we've already discussed, Mayor Len, when we caught up recently. Move on again. And still a lot to be undertaken here as well. Happy to talk individually about some of those projects. I think Topoi, Adrian, is probably closed from today. Yeah, but we've seen Wahara hopefully open back up again last week. Not really? Okay.
Sort of, yeah. It's quite stop-go still. Well, It was on Friday. It was, yeah.
Okay.
They weren't anywhere near finished outside the aerodrome on Friday.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Move on to the next one, please. And I've already talked to those ones, which are all the State Highway 1 areas. Great. The next slide is speed limit consultation. Again, I don't think I need to cover off anything there. And the last slide for questions. State Highway 129 roundabout, we've talked about that through Jason's presentation today. Coromandel Recovery Program, there is a lot of work still to come in that program, and that's something that I'll talk to you about a little more detail. Marilyn, I think our comms teams are connecting quite well at the moment in terms of stakeholder updates on that. Onitai Bridge replacement, this has been quite a big one, and again, largely successful one with the bridge near Hikutaia, north of Paeroa, which was closed for 4 weeks. I believe should be 1 more week left, or it could be opening this week. And it's been a successful replacement, successful detour, successful community engagement with the school, really engaged in the ability to provide a wee bridge for the school kids to access the school as well across the river alongside the bridge while it was being built was, really successful too. And Pepe Stream Bridge into Taira is another, big project to plan for the replacement with a 2-lane bridge in the future. So happy to take any questions, but aware of the timing restrictions.
Thanks, Andrew. Just a feedback from my point of view, especially on the T-Rail to Waru maintenance programs and the detours, and then also being on the State Highway 3 working group with your colleagues down there, the roads. So just what has been done to the roads is absolutely fantastic. Both safety and the workmanship, that I can see that's, and because I drive over them quite often. So yeah, just the feedback. Personally, I think from even the Soul Committee back to NZTA that, I think the work that's been done over the last 5 months, and it will come to an end, eventually. And, the same with the roundabout. I see that in the progress that's happened on State Highway 29. And now with the regional roads are significant, those two on this end, I think it'll make a huge difference to not only our network, but also the living, the way people live and commute in the Waikato region. So well done.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Andrew? If not, then Andrew, then we've got a resolution there that your report be received. I'm going to move in second. Thank you, Andrea. And a seconder. Thanks, Rodney. All those in favour? Those against? Carried.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Right, Lynn, sorry for the long wait. Could have been quite a busy morning, but welcome.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. I'll take the report as read, and I won't be too long. I'll just highlight some of the key areas, but if you could go on to the next slide, please. Well, I'll give a brief overview of RNIP, how it's funded the Rail Network Investment Programme, progress achieved to date, and the challenges that we've got ahead of us. And then I'll put a spotlight on Waikato, the results that we've delivered in FY24, give you a bit of a performance and a little bit of a focus in on 2 of our bridges that needed significant work. And we'll then go on to look at the Rail Network Investment Programme 2, so RNIP 2, the national programme, look at the Metro programme, how we'll measure success and key benefits, and focusing in again on the Waikato region, looking at the asset condition assessments that we have and the FY25 plan. Go on to the next slide, please. So I guess the RNIP is our response, our KIWIRAIL's response to the New Zealand Rail Plan, which is the government's 10-year strategy for rail, which is looking towards obtaining a resilient and reliable network. That is informed by both the regional land transport plans and the GPS, so the government policy statement. And the GPS was recently updated, and therefore our rail network investment programme was also updated recently and submitted. The rail network programme is funded as with the regional land transport plans through the NLTF, the National Land Transport. Next slide, please. So I guess we've had our first triennium for ARNIP, the Rail Investment Programme, and the financial result was within 3% of the targeted budget, which was a great success for us. Our track quality index has improved on priority routes. We have been focusing on rail condition, particularly where it's been very poor. We've been focusing on replacing sleepers. We also had the weather events and the subsequent repairs, 85 million worth of recovery. And I guess one of the key areas that we have focused on is recruiting staff to be able to deliver the ARNIP and bolstering up our capability, especially in the asset management area. Next slide, please. Yes, the global supply chain issues continue to be an issue for us, but with the 3-year look ahead of our programme, we're now in a position to purchase materials early and in advance of requiring them. The climate change and unexpected weather events also poses a big risk, but we are on the front foot with that. We've enhanced our planning, and we do have emergency risk procedures in place, and in certain areas we've bolstered them up and we can react exceedingly quickly. I guess next slide, please, and we'll focus now on the Waikato area. And next slide, thanks. I guess just a quick snapshot of the results delivered in FY24. I will take these as read and happy to answer any questions on those. If we just go to the next slide, I guess here is just an overview of our TSRs, our temporary speed restrictions, imposed track quality index, and heat 40. So again, our temporary speed restrictions due to potential buckling. Just take that slide as read. On to the next one. We do have a significant amount of timber bridges, aging timber bridges throughout the network, and this bridge 83 has been rebuilt. You can see the condition of it. So the condition of a number of our bridges, we have condition 5 elements, and we are not, unfortunately, we're not able to treat them as proactively as the track because they're big jobs, but it just gives you a few examples. Next slide, please. And again, we've replaced that because of the timber's got to its end of its life. We just jump to the next slide. So the Rail Network Investment Programme, having a look at the overall programme, it's split up into network maintenance and operations, so OPEX, network renewals, network improvements, and weather event recoveries. Go into detail, but happy to take any questions on those. We do have the rail network investment programs in the metros, which are funding the overdue renewals. So there is significant work going on in Auckland Metro at the moment to get ready for City Rail Link opening, and we're going through the dynamic testing at the moment, which has been very successful. Oh, sorry, on to next slide. So we're going through dynamic testing. That is proving to be really successful. Wellington Metro, we've also got overdue renewals there and significant amount of work to upgrade the passenger services there. Next slide, measuring success and key benefits. So I guess there is a list of commitments that we have made in terms of year 1 to year 3 of the investment priorities. The key things going forward are really focusing on the metros, the golden triangles, and our priority routes, and either maintain or even reduce levels of service on some of the lower priority routes. We just go to the next slide, please. Here is a snapshot of the asset condition in the Waikato area. So you will see there is quite a significant proportion of green, which is good, and we will be working to reduce the red as much as we can and start getting that into the green over the next 3-year triennium. If we go to the next slide, please. So I guess at the moment, this we had planned work, so we did submit our programme in the ARNIP 2 submission. We have more recently at the tail end of last year been invited by the Minister to submit a variation which is has an impact of reducing our work bank and funding over the next 3 years. So we are working at the moment to pull together a reduced submission. So I guess the philosophy will be the same. We will still focus on priority routes in Golden Triangle and potentially look to reduce even further some of the third party or the sort of branch lines, some of the lower down routes. Just go to the next slide. Happy to take any questions.
Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lynn, for your presentation. Yeah, so, some of those resilience projects, especially the bridges, long overdue. So we have maybe 16% in the Waikato that need doing as well. Yeah, I just had a question around the electrification from Hamilton to now Pukekohe. Yeah, and where are we sitting with the timing of that?
I guess I've got an update. So the progress on the business case continues to be good and is on track. Much of the technical work to inform the options assessment is now complete. This includes undertaking an international market sounding with locomotive buyers to obtain information on the latest electrical technology. While the options assessment is currently underway and subject to further detailed work, the emerging preferred solution involves a hybrid freight loco that's powered by overhead wires where installed and batteries where there's no overhead wires. Investigation is also considering how options would support future-proof for potential passenger and regional passenger rail services. And we are happy to engage with Council Office detail in the future. The business case is on track to be completed mid-2025 calendar year, and we would welcome the opportunity to provide another presentation around May, June time.
Yeah. Noting that our next meeting is in June, that could be a good timing to have a more focused agenda item, maybe on the electrification, if possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. No more questions for Lynn. Thanks very much for your report, Lynn. And we've got a resolution that the KiwiRail update report be received. I'll move it. Can I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Angela. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Okay. Yep. Okay, we'll finish with a karakia. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Karakia. Whakamang. Unihia mai tuuru tuapanui. Kia watia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te hininaro. I te arata kutu, koe rā e rongo, e whakairea ake ki runga, kia tina, huie, tā ki e.
Thanks, committee. In an hour, so if you could just take all your gear just